What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 151. Yes, 151. And if you haven't already caught it, go back and check out our celebratory 150th episode, our exclusive interview with the Ring of Honor, the 2019 Top Prospect Tournament winner, Dak Draper. So that's a really, really good listen. Or go and watch it on YouTube, where you've got the full kind of video YouTube interaction there with lots of added extras thrown into the video. But go and check that out. But just want to introduce our guest. We've had him on the podcast many times before. A good friend of the show, good friend of mine, John Scott. So, John from Powered4 TV, how you doing, my friend? Good to have you back.
Yeah, great to be here, and congratulations on your 150th episode very recently. A great listen as well. Recommend that to anybody that hasn't listened. But yeah, it's good to be back. Obviously, I'm becoming a bit of a, I don't know, like a normal nostalgic thing, I think, on your show, especially. But I'm glad I've got the takeover this weekend, because I was really looking forward to this and diving into this review. I was quite sort of very excited going into this one. I haven't been that excited or infused for a pay-per-view kind of event from WWE for a little while now. So it was good to go in that with that behind us. And as you say, I don't think I could announce the name last time I was here of where we are now at Powered4. And of course, yourself, you're going to be a big part of that as well with our YouTube going forward. So
that's right.
Yeah, stuff's moving very, very fast. And of course, September is only around the corner. So all good.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get stuck into TakeOver 30 very soon, John. But let's stick with Powered4 TV a little bit, if that's okay. I mean, last time you were on, I think it was another takeover, wasn't it? The previous NXT takeover. I can't remember what the strap of that was, but you weren't able to announce much about Powered4 TV. Now it's kind of out there. The logo's out there. The name's out there. Things are changing. Things are picking up. Is there anything that you can tell us about Powered4 TV, and what can viewers or subscribers to Powered4 TV come to expect from Powered4 going forward and in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot going on. Obviously, Turnbuckle TV will be transitioning over to us. So anything that was there on Turnbuckle TV, our flagship show, of course, TNT, the promotion, who have got some amazing stuff coming up, especially in the new year. They've just announced as well their own wrestling school that's also going to be a part of Powered4. And MMA. So for MMA fans, you might not be maybe a purist wrestling fan, or you may be a wrestling fan that likes to check out some MMA. You're going to have that option with us now, and I'm kind of looking forward to that myself, because I think that what I want to do with Powered4 is give as much variety as possible. And of course, mixed martial art, it does have that nice crossover. We've seen it in the last, 20 years of Ronda Rousey or Brock Lesnar or Ken Shamrock, going way back. But we know there's always been that nice crossover, and it does. Sometimes when wrestling gets too much, you can just flick it over and get a different taste for something else. And yeah, on top of that, of course, we've got like another 15 promotions at least that are going to be on the subscribers side. And I've very recently been going through a lot of the archive of the stuff and the footage, and there's so much good quality that I don't think people quite realise that's out there. I want to give a shout out to Clash. I mean, that they don't run anymore, but the shows that they did do, the production level, give a shout out to CJ Carter there. He is an amazing editor, and he's done some very exciting stuff. And what's cool is he's now going to have a new promotion called Ignite that is also going to be a part of us as well. And yeah, so we've got all those promotions, and of course it is a video on demand service, but it's a little bit more as well. The fact that you and I are going to be on there, we've got Jess as well, we've got Stu from Stu Podcasts. So we have video on demand, but we also have a built-in media team. So we're going to be covering a whole lot of things, obviously, to promote the shows on there, but also just to kind of promote British wrestling in general. That's kind of the idea, to do as much media as we can. Of course, yourself, you're going to be a big host on YouTube. And of course, I suppose we can announce it now, give you a little exclusive on the Johners podcast.
Come on, John.
And of course, it rolls in very nicely with the news I woke up to this morning with the video playing. Of course, NXT UK, which is scheduled to be coming back anytime now to do some recordings and we'll be back for September. And you and I and Jess as well, we're going to be doing our very own NXT UK weekly show available on YouTube, which I'm kind of really looking forward to. I know that the market in terms of what's out there at the moment, there isn't a whole lot with NXT UK. There wasn't certainly before COVID either. So I want to give a little bit of light to the NXT UK. I don't think it gets as much publicity as what it should be getting. I think when they first announced NXT UK was going to be a thing, I think there was this huge buzz and what could this bring to the British wrestling scene. And I think it's kind of one of those things where I think a lot of fans are a little bit skeptical because it is sort of WWE umbrella. But at the same time, we have to remember that to have a developmental, in this country for wrestlers to go to like that, kind of, you've always got to go across the pond scenario is now not a thing. We're fortunate enough where the talent, not just wrestlers, but even people in the backstage can now get access straight in this country, which I think is a big thing. And so I'm really looking forward to doing that weekly show with yourself, and I think we're going to have a blast doing it. And of course that'll be available as soon as NXT UK starts back again.
Well, that's it. And I was going to bring this up a bit later. We might as well talk about it now because we are going to be doing our weekly NXT UK review shows as part of Powered4 TV on the YouTube channel. It may be going on the main site as well. But they did run an advert towards the end of TakeOver last night or early hours of this morning, depending on where in the world you're watching it. And it was quite interesting. It was only about a 2-minute package, but a few things I noticed. Some of the faces, some of the names that cropped up during that NXT UK return kind of advert. You had obviously the NXT UK champion Walter, Eddie Dennis was on there, A-Kid, Trent Seven briefly popped up, Piper Niven, Kaylee Ray, and Ilya Dragunov. You also saw little snippets of Flash Morgan Webster, Ginny, Mark Andrews, Dave Mastiff, Zaya Brookside, and I think it's Aya Valkyrie popped up. So a lot of familiar and a lot of not so familiar faces popping up, which makes you think that there were some notable absences that were kind of a key staple to the NXT UK roster. We won't get into all of that, but there could be reasons why certain faces weren't part of that and reasons why certain people won't be part of the NXT UK package or products going forward. One interesting thing that I really picked up on though during that advert was there was a little bit of a voiceover clip, a little bit of a soundbite saying that from the BT Sports Studio in the heart of London. So it sounds like the American version of Black and Gold brands of NXT over in Florida, where they've got Full Sail as their permanent base, their permanent home. NXT UK is going to have their permanent home as well from the BT Sports Studios. So quite interesting. And they're not going to be doing tapings around the country like they did in Essex or in Liverpool or Brighton or Hull or wherever they used to kind of go to in the Download Festival. They're going to be doing it from a permanent base now, and from the first show goes live on the 17th of September. That's obviously going to be recorded in the next couple of weeks, but a couple of interesting takeaways from that advert, John.
Yeah, it was. And I think it makes sense to be stationed in one location at this current time, of course, with the whole COVID-19 situation, and
True.
Of course not knowing when fans are, relatively going to be back, and even if they are, what capacity will that be at? We already know that NXT UK, they weren't sort of drawing huge thousands upon thousands on just the weekly shows anyway. So I think in the long run, this might actually work out beneficial for them to sort of have almost like a little bit of a territory staple, because I don't think they really had that when they first, I remember when they did the first couple of UK schools, Blackpool was a big focal point because of the tournament they had. And then, of course, they did the Royal Albert Hall, which, I was there for. But, I remember the first night didn't sell fantastically well until they had the sort of other NXT guys in from the US. So I think they're trying to, I think if they had it their way, I think London would be the ideal location anyway, because, it's the capital. A lot of stuff happens. Of course, wrestling, it's always been great. You talk about venues like York Hall. I'd love to see an NXT UK there as well, to someday get that themselves. And I think that, It makes sense at this point, as you say about the current talent that they showcased in that video. I think they were very specific. I don't think that was I don't think
No.
that was by chance. And I would imagine that perhaps in this time they might have reflected on where they've come from thus far, and looked at what's worked, what's not worked, and you never know. They may actually. I actually believe personally we may see a very different style going forward, like whether that be in the production, whether that's how they present it in the ring. But I do think we're going to get a different presentation when they finally come back. And I think with this gap in between, obviously in the US, they haven't been able to do this. They've just been literally flooding the whole video content archive like week to week. With us, we've kind of, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we've got this nice gap where I think it can give a lot of good time to reflect and put in something new. So I think that might benefit NXT UK quite a bit there. I think there'll be a little bit of an itch for it.
Yeah, definitely exciting times. And by the sounds of it, like I say, certainly for the foreseeable future, it's going to be behind closed doors. And of course, being London, that's where they've got their WWE UK Performance Centre, of course. So it all makes sense for it all to be in the same area. So exciting things. And less than a month away from the first broadcast of the kind of next chapter, shall we say, of NXT UK. And of course, it will be covered on a weekly basis here on Powered4 TV, of course, with myself and John and Jess. So looking forward to that. One thing that I've always prided myself on is kind of being able to provide something for the listeners and for the fans of Wrestling with John's podcast. And I just would like to kind of announce the launch of a brand new merchandise store for Wrestling with John, as we officially have our own merchandise store on Pro Wrestling Tees. So if you want to kind of grab yourself a Wrestling with John's podcast, and some brand new designs up there as well, one of which was from Rich Howes, who we had on the Wrestling with John's podcast a few weeks back. And he's designed for Cody Rhodes, the Bullet Club, New Japan, and Killer Kross, or Karrion Kross we should call him by nowadays. But he's designed for so many kind of international wrestling superstars around the world. And now he's designed a t-shirt for Wrestling with John. So go and check out that along with other Wrestling with John's t-shirts at prowrestlingtees.com/Wrestling with Johners. So I'll be putting out the link on the various social pages fairly soon, but I just wanted to get that out there. A bit of a cheap plug and something I'm quite proud of. So go and check that out over on the Wrestling with John's page on Pro Wrestling Tees. So, John, the 30th edition of TakeOver, NXT TakeOver. So I think we can probably agree kind of wholeheartedly there's not been a single bad TakeOver, to be honest with you. I certainly can't remember a TakeOver. And I think there was a period between 2016 and 2018 where every single TakeOver seemed to top the one before it. It just seemed to get better and better and better. And even kind of some of the, dare I say it, poorer ones have still been top-notch, still been absolutely fantastic. And when you kind of put all the 29 or 30 takeovers together, it's an amazing collection of consecutive, fantastic pay-per-view style cards from NXT that would kind of equal or rival any promotion in the world. I mean, people kind of wax lyrical about New Japan and all the fantastic pay-per-views and shows, but NXT with what they've been able to pump out over the last 6 or 7 years of takeovers has been fantastic, and this one I'm sure will be no different. But going into last night's TakeOver 30, it was from Full Sail. They've been recording quite a lot from the PC, but certainly not from the Thunderdome, John. A lot of people, a lot of NXT fans were a bit disappointed it wasn't going to be from the Thunderdome. But back in their traditional base of Full Sail, what were your kind of thoughts and expectations? Any matches that kind of jumped off the page before we talk about any of the matches, but anything you were particularly excited or looking forward to about this one last night?
Well, before I get into that, I do want to, as you say, just give a little shout out to some of the great NXT takeovers in the past. That my sort of favourite era of that is when it all first started, when we had the likes of Pac back then when he just started out. We had Tyler Breeze was phenomenal. Of course, what's his name? The Nighthearts guy. Oh, what's his name?
TJ Wilson. Tyson Kidd.
Tyson Kidd was phenomenal.
That was great.
He went back there and he was just. I mean, they were pulling out some crazy stuff, especially triple threats. Like I've never been a big fan of triple threats, but watching them do it and the ladder matches they did back then, and there was something when that first come around, the NXT just in general, you thought, hang on a minute, it's quieter, it's only an hour, but you know, I can really take this. This is very nice. It reminded me going way back where there just used to be studio wrestling, and it was mainly bell to bell. We didn't have a whole lot of backstage promos. It was most of the stories were carried out bell to bell, week to week, and yeah, it was more sort of about the competitive edge over one another than anything else. And yeah, you know, you look at the roster now. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but I imagine it's quite high of people that have come through NXT to where they are now on that main roster. You know, like the Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. You know, the list goes on.
Indeed.
Of course, not all have worked out. I should point that one out as well. Some have ended up being better with NXT than they ever did on the main roster. But
and others have worked out on the main roster that you didn't expect them to, like
exactly.
You know, Elias, for example, and one or two others. But
yeah, so some tremendous memories. And I was thinking back, you know, 5 years ago it was that I was in New York for the first ever sort of takeover they did in front of a bigger audience that night in the Barclays Center. And I remember thinking then how big of a big deal it was. But here we are at the 30th one who think it. And, you know, it's grown. I mean, obviously going into this, I never had the expectations that this was going to be in the Thunderdome. So I wasn't too worried about that because I knew that they built it for SmackDown and SummerSlam was going to be the big kind of thing for that. I think SmackDown was more of a test for it. But yeah, I didn't have those high expectations. And to be honest with you, takeovers in that setting, they work for me. I don't have a problem. I think because it's all they darken out everything anyway, even on a regular takeover when fans are there. So as far as an imagery for me, I'm never taken out of a takeover. But when it comes to the main WWE side, I am. But I think for takeovers, I was fine. And I quite like the setup they did. They used I'm sure they recycled the 30 from WrestleMania 30 with those big X's, which was a nice little touch. And it was nice to see Pyro. I think it's been greatly missed, Pyro. I don't know why they cut back on that area when there was other areas I'm sure they could cut back on. But it does just give it that little bit more of a big time feel. And I was quite happy to see that last night. And yeah, as I say, the match, there was a couple of matches I was intrigued for. Probably the main event, Keith Lee. And, you know, I've been very intrigued. Of course, the whole thing with Adam Cole has got a lot of outside attention, I guess, and that's going to be intriguing. So, but overall, I was kind of massively up for this one and seeing what they deliver.
Yeah, and the same here, to be honest with you. And it's funny that you said you went to the first ever TakeOver Brooklyn 5 years ago. But was that when you had that incredible match between Bayley and Sasha Banks?
Mm.
Yeah, you were lucky to be there. And I was at TakeOver New Orleans over WrestleMania 34 weekend, and that was a stonker as well. And I've been to a couple of UK takeovers, which have always delivered. But I don't know if you caught the pre-show match, but they did have a pre-show match in the 30 minutes before the main show kicked off, and it was a triple threat tag match. It's billed as a number one contenders match for the NXT tag team titles, which are, of course, held by Imperium at the moment, Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner. And it was a tag match, triple threat tag match, as I explained, between Breezango, Danny Burch and Only Lorcan, and Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza. Now, I can't remember, or even if I could remember, probably pronounce their faction names, so I'm not even going to bother. I'll just stick with Wilde and Mendoza. But I mean, to cut a long story short, this pre-show match, it was a fast and furious and really, really fun match. Breezango managed to pull off the win following some excellent tag team action, I thought, from all three teams. I thought it was fast and furious from bell to bell, and all three teams really, really delivered. It was Tyler Breeze who managed to pick up the win for his team following a super kick, and they placed Breezango as the new number one contenders to the tag team gold. Like I say, that's at Imperium, so whether that'll be on a future NXT on a Wednesday night or maybe for the next takeover, more than likely for a Wednesday night show coming up. And then we kicked straight into the main show then, John, and bit of a change to the commentary team. You had the familiar face of Beth Phoenix there as well. But the return of Corey Graves to the NXT commentary desk. And of course, he did NXT for quite a few years before going on to Raw and then SmackDown. And Vic Joseph was the third member of the commentary team. He kind of was the lead commentator. No Mauro Ranallo, not sure why. But hopefully that's not a permanent thing. We do love Mauro Ranallo on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. And then the main show kicked off, and quite a solid hard-hitting, exciting match to kick things off. Finn Balor versus Timothy Thatcher. So just quickly on Timothy Thatcher, John, just want your opinion on him, because he's had a fantastic start to his NXT career. He's not traditionally the type of wrestler that would do well in an NXT or a WWE, because he's more kind of grapple based. He hasn't really got much of a over the top gimmick to him. He's all about kind of the kind of submission holds and the ground and pounds. But he's had quite a good start to his NXT career. Before we get into the match, tell us about kind of how you think Timothy Thatcher has fared so far in NXT, because he's done surprisingly well in my books. He managed to defeat Matt Riddle in their feud, of course, before he went off to SmackDown. So they kind of played him quite strongly so far.
Yeah, I'm not going to elude anybody. I am a huge Timothy Thatcher fan. I'm quite a big fan of his, as you can imagine, my old school roots coming out of me there. But I think for a lot of fans, he's not probably the sort of guy you go, you call up to your mate upstairs and go, come on, Thatcher match is on, come and watch it, get excited about it. Because I think for the sort of, maybe the sort of general fan isn't probably going to quite get what's going on. But for me, I mean, what's old becomes new again. And I like the fact that WWE have pounced on, his strengths, and that they're going to play him the very straight and down the middle way that's far. And of course they've really sort of gone into the whole MMA background, that style. I certainly felt that with the Matt Riddle match that they did, that they wanted to really get that over as strong as possible. But you know what, I mean, the size of the guy, he's a big guy, he's not small. And he looks the part. I just wonder, this guy on the main roster maybe does well for a couple of months. I don't know where he would. It depends how much they put in his basket to where he could go. But I do think that if they played him right and kind of always used him in that gimmick all the time, and they just had sort of fed him some opponents for a while into his style, that he could work quite effectively. So I'm a big fan, and I've enjoyed what they've done with him thus far. And of course, he goes in here with a match with Finn Balor to kick things off.
Yeah, and if all else fails with Timothy Thatcher's singles career in NXT, I could always put him back with his old ring camp buddies, Walter and Marcel Bartel and Alexander Wolf, of course. That'll be a nice addition to the faction there. But, I mean, in this match, Thatcher, he went to work on Finn Balor's ribs for the early minutes of the matches. Balor managed to turn the tide with an inverted implant DDT and then a shotgun drop kick into the corner, but misses his first attempt at a coup de grace, landed awkwardly on his left leg, allowing Thatcher to hook in a single leg Boston Crab. The match continued for a few more minutes, with both guys exchanging stiff strikes and holds, with Balor managing to hit a coup de grace on a second attempt and a 1916 DDT for the 1-2-3. So it was a good match. It was a very competitive match. Both guys gave as good as they got. I think that Thatcher definitely dominated the power game, and he did have the size advantage over Balor. But a strong opener for these two, and a tough win for Finn Balor. He definitely had his work cut out for him. You could tell by the end of that match that he was kind of, really breathing hard, and he had a hell of a match. But it does bring a halt to Timothy Thatcher's kind of undefeated run, or his run in NXT. But I'd love to see your thoughts on Finn Balor then, because he keeps getting put into these takeover matches. We saw him in against the match with Johnny Gargano where he won that one. The last takeover he managed to defeat Damian Priest, and then here against Thatcher. But Balor appears to be stuck in this kind of quagmire of mid-card matches at the moment, and when he does get that title match, he always seems to fall at the last. But your thoughts on Finn Balor, and is it going to be kind of mid-card future for Finn Balor going forward?
Yeah, just a quick note on the commentating, by the way. Marinello, he's been in Canada with his family, so he's not going to be doing it. But I know that he couldn't get across and do the show, so he will be back. But yeah, Finn Balor, he's come down to NXT, obviously looking to rekindle what was ever there. Maybe they're going to try and find that spark. He was a heel, of course, that sort of kicked things off. But now I'm kind of thinking, like, blimey, he's on NXT, and now he's become in the middle of the shuffle there as well. So, and I was quite surprised with the outcome. I I was a little bit disappointed that Thatcher didn't get the win, or it wasn't some sort of DQ finish to sort of protect him a little bit more. Because in my eyes, although I'm a Finn Balor fan, I don't see Finn Balor like I don't see the head of steam. I think Thatcher had some steam behind him. I would have pushed with that a little bit further, because I don't think at this point Finn Balor isn't going to be any worse than what it is anyway. Because until they really find something for him to get stuck into, I don't know quite where Finn Balor goes after this. You know, sometimes he's babyface, sometimes he's heel. That's the other thing as well. He's almost being like the perfect, addition for them. A little bit like Randy Orton sometimes. Like he gets stuck in that role. You know, sometimes he's a heel, sometimes he's a face, and they chop and change. And of course, the more times they do that, trust me, in the long run, you lose it altogether. So you've got to be careful with that. I did enjoy the match. I think Finn Balor, just to touch on him as a note, he certainly hasn't gone down there like Charlotte did, to have that rub on somebody else, to give somebody. I don't think he could even do it. I don't think perhaps even if Thatcher won that they go, oh my goodness, he's beat the Finn Balor. Because at this point, I just don't know for Finn Balor what is there for him. I don't know creatively what they're doing for him. I'm hoping they've got some good stuff for him now. He's got the win and that somebody's fought ahead to sort of go for that next whatever it is. But my guess is maybe he's just going to be a yo-yo for a while, up and down, and we're going to see where needed. I think the whole thing, I mean, I don't know what you think, but the demon character, I know everyone keeps carping on, he's got to go back to the demon. Well, the problem is you can't keep coming out as the demon every week because that's just going to be too much exposure. But I think certainly when he was there before, we'd see the demon at takeovers at least, and maybe that's what they've got to try and get back to. I just wonder at this point, I look at NXT and I'm like, there's a lot of those kind of characters around at the moment. We saw it in our main event, we saw it in the match just after this as well. Those characters, they're coming in all over, and I don't know if the demon just sort of adds like another dimension to that, where they're like, we don't want another person at the moment playing that kind of role. So he's in a really difficult spot where I almost feel like he may have to try and reinvent himself in another way, and get really creative.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think that Finn Balor, as much as he keeps winning these takeover matches, it's kind of more, mid-card matches, mid-card feuds, nothing too exciting, nothing really for him to get his teeth into. The Demons, I'd love to see the Demon back again, but I think that needs to be in front of an audience. That needs to be in front of crowds, to be honest with you. That's where it really, really works. But when they were bringing the Demon out on NXT, or maybe even once or twice on the main roster, it just seemed, like it was just too much. And they overused the gimmicks. I'm glad that they've had quite a while between. I think the last time we saw the Demon was probably last year's WrestleMania, WrestleMania 37 in New York. But
sorry to cut you up. A quick question. I was just going to throw you in. As soon as we was talking about NXT UK, I mean, do you think that there's any? I know he wouldn't want to do it because he'd see that as a major blow, I'm sure, to his career, that he's gone from main roster, main event, winning the Universal Championship, but at this point, I wonder if NXT UK, even just for a couple of months, would be the place, that they could do with him. I'm not saying right now because
well, I thought that's the way they were heading. I honestly thought that's the way they were heading, because they were kind of teasing a match between Finn Balor and Tyler Bate, weren't they? But I also thought they were kind of teasing. It was a subtle tease that Finn Balor might be headlining the NXT UK Dublin show that was obviously postponed back in May because of COVID. And I thought, although a lot of people were saying it could have been Ilya Dragunov versus Walter, I had an inkling that it could have been Finn Balor versus Walter. So that would be quite an intriguing match. I think Finn Balor versus anybody from the UK brands, Tyler Bate or Walter or Ilya Dragunov, would be absolutely amazing. So we'll have to see. But I think he could be just like Cesaro did in Cardiff 12 months ago, just popped up for the odd match. I think that to have Balor represent NXT on a UK takeover card would be fantastic. So definitely intrigued by that. But interesting times for Finn Balor for sure. Let's talk about the next match then, John. So it's a 5-man ladder match for the vacant North American Championship. So Keith Lee obviously gave up the North American Championship soon after winning the NXT Gold. I bet he was wishing at the end of last night that he hadn't, but it was a vacant match. Now, what was quite interesting about this one, now the first time the North American Championship was defended at TakeOver New Orleans 2.5 years ago, I was at, was also a ladder match. So kind of a bit of a throwback to that. The competitors in last night's match were Bronson Reed, the big Australian, was he close to 400 pounds? He's getting a good push. Johnny Gargano, Mr. Takeover, of course. Damien Priest, Cameron Grimes. I'm a big fan of Cameron Grimes. Trevor Lee, of course. I think he's done fantastic. And the returning Velveteen Dream. So, I mean, this was one of those matches I was looking forward to, kind of on paper. Probably similar to yourself. Everything, you know, off the back of especially off the back of the injury that Johnny Gargano sustained this past Wednesday. I know it would have been taped a week earlier, but when Ridge Holland dropped Johnny Gargano on his head from that botched power slam, and I'm surprised even a week or 2 weeks removed from that injury to see Johnny Gargano looking so fresh and looking so good last night. But that was one thing I was particularly interested to see about how he would be after that drop on the head. Also, the takeover debuts of Bronson Reed and the ever-entertaining Cameron Grimes. So any thoughts on the participants of this match before we talk about the match itself, John?
Yeah, again, this was the sort of excitement, I guess, of the night in terms of what we were going to get. I think we always kind of assumed a ladder match, 5 competitors like this, you're going to get that. But going into this, I've been following Damien Priest quite a bit. I've been a bit of a fan of his since last TakeOver, watching his stuff. And I believe the announcers, they did say something about, I don't know how true it is, because I know sometimes they say things and it's not quite there, but he was paying some sort of homage to sort of Razor and Shawn Michaels with some of the stuff. And, I kind of can see that as well, especially with Shawn Michaels, just sort of a different style of version. I know the character's very different, but you can see with his in-ring what he's trying to do there. And then he's got quite an interesting look. I'd say he's very marketable for WWE. In the long run, he's somebody I would definitely have my eyes on. But going in, again, some amazing competitors in there. Gargano, as you say, he's like the guy through and through. He's been there, he never seems to. He's somebody I just think should stay with the NXT brand, because I think he's going to build more of a legacy for himself there than he's going to do anywhere else at this time. Yeah. And it was good to, see it. A ladder match in general, I'm always quite intrigued to see what they do with these multi-man, types. Of course, we've had a lot of this year because of the current situation. We go back to our famous Money in the Bank, which was all over the place, of course, until they got up to the roof. But I think I enjoyed this one a hell of a lot more than that. And it's nice to see a more, I guess, it's weird to say it, but a traditional 5-man ladder match in my eyes.
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun and plenty of interesting spots involved with the ladders in this one, of course, including a big splash from Bronson Reed in the corner with 4 opponents and 3 ladders, followed by a gigantic 4-man Tower of Doom spot. That's always good fun. The match takes an interesting turn where the match goes to the outside with an impressive spinning power slam from Cameron Grimes on Johnny Gargano. Always love that. It's kind of like a Spanish fly power slam, you could say, followed by a huge dive through the ropes to the outside by Bronson Reed, and then a ladder run sent on by Damien Priest over the top rope and onto the gang on the outside. Candice LeRae makes an appearance, comes out to interfere, leading to a spot where she gets caught on the back of Bronson Reed when he's on top of the ladder. He comes flying off the ladder with Candice LeRae still on his back with a giant frog splash. Never seen that done before. Absolutely fantastic. Down onto Johnny Gargano. And I thought, crikey, that's going to hurt everybody involved in that one. That was a hell of a spot. That was the spot of the match for me. There was another spot where Johnny Gargano hit a sunset bomb on Cameron Grimes onto a ladder set up as a bridge down below. Velveteen Dream gets tipped off of the big tall ladder from the center of the ring and over the top of the plexiglass surroundings down through a couple of tables set up in kind of the crowd area. So that was really impressive. Bit of a highlight there. But this amazing match, it came to an end when all the wrestlers kind of take it in turns to get their hand on the leather belt. But it's Damian Priest who toughed it out and got both hands on the strap to become the new North American champion. So a really fun match, a good match. I couldn't really fault it, to be honest with you. There wasn't any noticeable botches. I think all 5 wrestlers had their time to shine. Some really cool spots involving the ladders. Some innovative moments as well. But I really enjoyed this one. And kind of 3 matches in, this was my match of the night. But what about yourself, John?
Yeah, no. What do you know? What the sort of length of time this match went? I don't have it in my notes, but when I was watching it, it just like when you stop even looking at the clock because there's so much going on. It was one of those matches. So I have absolutely no idea, but it was like you say, everyone got their moment, everyone got their sort of spots in to do it. It's very well. I say whoever booked it done a very good job of showcasing each person. Without it being the sort of what I call the Royal Rumble spot where person comes out, they beat everyone up for a minute and then the next it goes on. So it wasn't thankfully too much of that formula, but I enjoyed it. And I think at this point, we're what 2 matches in, I'm like, we're not going to go wrong with this takeover. That's far. I think it's very strong going into this. Like you say, there was some quite risque moments in there. That I hadn't really seen before, like you say, and it did keep me on my toes a little bit, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Felt the right winner coming out, like you say, Keith Lee. I never understand when they have 2 belts and then they win like the main one, why they always give up the secondary one. I used to love the idea of like Warrior having both titles.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something about it, like showcasing that you can win at all levels and defend at all levels. There's something cool about it, but they don't. They're not fond of doing that sort of storyline. I think they think we've got more people to put that on, so you've got to give it up sort of thing. But I would have liked to have played around with that idea a little bit longer if they would have.
Yeah, I mean, I was rooting for Cameron Grimes. I don't mind saying I would have liked to have seen him. I think he's got a great personality, really, really good in the ring, and I think he'll get his moment in the sunshine fairly soon. But I'm pleased for Damian Priest. I must be honest with you, I'm not as big a fan of Damian Priest as you are, quite clearly. But like I say, it's somebody new, somebody fresh, and somebody to kind of build a championship round. So very, very pleased with that. Now this next match was really, really intriguing. Adam Cole versus Pat McAfee. Now, it wasn't until kind of watching the video package back that I realised that Cole and Pat McAfee, they've had a bit of a spiky relationship for a couple of years now. Now, I don't know if it was done by design or whether they just kind of realised, that it just, that Pat McAfee maybe had something in for Cole in real life. But when you look back through that video package, they kind of mentioned Pat McAfee saying something not too kind about Adam Cole on the kind of takeover pre-show panel in New Orleans 2.5 years ago. And I've been very impressed with the build to this match, the way they've kind of put it all together, and the way they've portrayed Pat McAfee as well. Now, he's a former American football kicker. And I don't know if he's won a Super Bowl, but it sounds like I think he's achieved a lot of success, a lot of fame and money through American football. He's a bit of a talk show host and a podcast host and occasional host on the pre-show panel on NXT as well. But I think he's played his part in this feud really, really well, to be honest with you. Now, I think that they've built him up as a good vocal person, great behind the mic. And more recently, they've built him up as quite a physical person as well. But I've really enjoyed his kind of brash heel persona and his cockiness. But what's your thoughts on the way they've kind of built this feud from kind of the way they normally do former sports personalities coming into wrestling, like Lawrence Taylor and 1 or 2 others, has been a bit, not that exciting. But I think the way they've built Pat McAfee has been quite a success. And any thoughts on the build to this one?
Yeah, I was a little bit hit and miss with this when they did that the show where, of course, he was on his podcast and they did that square up. I know there was a lot of fans out there going, "It's real, you've got to watch this." I had loads of videos being sent to me, and I watched it. First time round, I knew it was a work. There was no way for me that was 100% legit. But I think what they've done is I do think there was beef, and what they've done is just done some good business with it. And done it the right way. Did I believe that? No, I don't think it was sort of up there with Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler from the Letterman show. Let's put it that way. But I do like the way they went around of it. The one thing I'll say about Pat McAfee is like I know very little about the guy in terms of his American football history. I know he does podcasts. I know he's a fan. I think you can tell he's a fan, and there's a big difference between getting a celebrity / sports personality in that's a fan, somebody who's not. Now to come in and play a heel, especially like normally the celebrity, the sports fan, they're always the baby face. I like the fact that they've switched that up a bit. I can't remember the last time they've done that. I might have to go back to like that flipping Kevin Federline stuff they did with John Cena that time, where he'd come out as the big bad heel, and of course Umaga squashed Cena. But there's not many times where the celebrity wants to come in and get booed, but this guy obviously understands the psychology of it, and you could tell. Yeah. But mate, I tell you what, you put him up against Gronk, I know who I'm choosing.
Definitely,
he's got a lot more. He's got a lot more about him than what Gronk did. Gronk. For everything, I know that he's got a following, but for me, he just comes across as like very childish, and I just can't take his enthusiasms like a 12-year-old at times. And you put that up against this guy, and I was really for it. So I liked the build up. I like the fact that the package, a couple of years worth there, which makes a change. It really does make a lot of change. My gripes only towards this at the beginning was I was thinking, blimey, Adam Cole, he was the previous NXT champion. How does this look for him? This guy's pretty much saying he's too skinny, he's too small, and he's calling out things that legit people, us as fans are saying, let alone WWE trying to protect that a little bit. So it was kind of like, blimey, they're really pulling out all the stomps. But I know a lot of people were harping on that's really bad for Adam Cole. How's he going to get out of this? But at this stage, in this environment that we live in now with social media and the business being so exposed, what difference does it make really if this guy's going to come in and just call it out? I just think it adds to it a little bit more. And going in, I didn't know what to expect because, like I say, I don't know what this guy can do and what he can't do. But I was very surprised. This was very entertaining.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed as well. And like I say, one interesting dynamic, and you touched on it earlier, was Adam Cole as a babyface. I don't think he's played a babyface in his entire NXT run. I think he's traditionally been a heel throughout his entire wrestling career. Really, really interesting to see the dynamic there. And I thought Pat McAfee played the perfect heel to Adam Cole's babyface. But very early on in this match, we have the Undisputed Era. They come down to confront Pat McAfee's kind of NFL friends, NFL cronies. And then we see Pat McAfee out of nowhere do a flip dive like a senton off the top turnbuckle onto the gang of wrestlers and NFL guys on the outside. That was really impressive. Down onto the crowd of bodies and gave McAfee the upper hand. The match turned into a bit of a fist fight, leading to a series of near falls for Adam Cole, with some impressive bumping from Pat McAfee. And for somebody that's not a trained wrestler, he definitely took his back bumps really, really well. I thought he was great. There was even an impressive series of moves from Pat McAfee. He gets up on the top turnbuckle, looking to do some sort of suplex move with Adam Cole, but gets shoved backwards, and very, very kind of cat-like, he perfectly lands on his feet in the center of the ring on his feet, and then just leaps from the canvas to the top turnbuckle to execute the superplex from the top turnbuckle on Adam Cole and gets a close near fall. I thought that was tremendous. I really popped for that. McAfee, he nearly had the match won with a punt kick to the chest and the head of Adam Cole, but it was Adam Cole who picked up the well-deserved win with a well-executed and well-calculated Panama Sunrise. He was going to go for the last shot, running knee, but decided to do for a Panama Sunrise. Got the 1, 2, 3, and for me, this was a ton of fun. Really, really enjoyed the hell out of the match. It didn't go too long. It didn't drag in any places. I thought the dynamics between these two were off the charts. The action was hot. Pat McAfee was a complete superstar, and I for one have a ton of respect for Pat McAfee coming out of that match, and would love to see more of him. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch, to be honest with you. I thought the two of them had great chemistry, but you put Pat McAfee in there with anybody, I think that could be a good match going forward. So I think he's got a bit of an NXT future, John.
I was going to say that. I think if I was WWE, I'd be getting the checkbook out because I'd let go some of these other people. Like your Gronk and all the rest of it. I know he's now signed for an NFL team anyway, so he's been drafted. But he looks good. And you know what? You could put him against any kind of babyface that needs that rub because he's going to get heat. He's very good at it. But the performance he put in last night was almost like a babyface coming out of it, because you thought, I think everyone was quite shocked at what he could actually do. And don't get me wrong, I do think there would have been a lot of design around it to, smoke and mirrors, make sure we played to his strengths. But if you look at the pacing, he didn't rush everything. He took his time where he needed. He got the heat. If there were fans there, it would have been 10 times better, I would say. As good as it was, I think with fans in there, it would have bbe really. We might be talking about this as maybe match of the night easily, with that kind of reaction that he would have got. So, and especially as he's good on the mic, I would love to see him in some sort of authority role within NXT, sort of screwing over people and having the occasional matches here and there. I think that would work perfectly, because of course, he has the podcast anyway, so he can use that to build things up as well. So very good, very surprised in a good way. I wasn't expecting it to be anywhere close to what it got to last night, so I was very impressed. And the guy can go, he's definitely got the athletic attributes to do wrestling as well. And like I say, I would sign him up for NXT. I would get him on at least a short-term contract right now.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a kind of 4-on-4 encounter between the Undisputed Era, all 4 members of the Undisputed Era, and Pat McAfee and his kind of NFL cronies. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of an 8-man tag match coming up soon. Good point. Yeah, Survivor Series. You've got War Games not too far around the corner. The next match, the 4th match on the card, Io Shirai versus Dakota Kai for the NXT Women's Championship. Now, this was another match, I didn't know that I wanted until I saw the video package, the hype package before the match itself, and the way they kind of put these WWE and NXT video packages together are just absolutely fantastic. I don't think there's any other organisation that does it as well, and they certainly do get you excited for matches that you probably weren't excited for just from watching the weekly shows, to be honest with you. And I think that's the magic of WWE sometimes. But the match barely got started when Io nearly put a premature end to the match by landing on her head following a handspring backflip that she did. So that kind of took her out the match for the rest of the match. I think that kind of affected the match, but that's certainly going to be on a Botchamania highlight somewhere, sure, fairly soon. Io was favouring her left arm throughout the match. Now, I'm not sure whether that was injured because of the kind of botched handspring that she did earlier on. But there was a tree of woe spots from Io coming off the top turnbuckle with a double foot stomp for a close near fall. Dakota almost had the match won with a Fujiwara armbar, but Io managed to get to the bottom rope to break the hold. Dakota Kai gets a close near fall from a GTS, with Io putting her foot on the rope once again to break the count. There's a ref bump in the corner just before Io hits her trademark moonsault, and with no referee to hit the count, Raquel Gonzalez comes in, hits a huge choke slam on Io, on the champ. Dakota Kai makes the cover. The referee comes round, but can only get a 2 count. There's another moonsault from Io Shirai, this time to the outside, catching Raquel Gonzalez square in the face with her boots, and then she hits a second moonsault back inside the ring on Dakota Kai for the 1-2-3, and she retains her championship. So this was another hard-fought match. I can't help but think that kind of botch at the beginning of the match, where she kind of landed on her head from that backflip, kind of hindered her for the rest of the match. The match didn't really get going, or didn't really get started as far as I'm concerned. After the match, you had Raquel Gonzalez started a bit of a beat down on Io in the centre of the ring, and then we hear the familiar music of Rhea Ripley come out to make the save, and you have a bit of a stare down between Rhea Ripley and Gonzalez. Looks like there's a bit of a feud being set between those two for the future. So Io did manage to retain her championship, but in my opinion, it was a less than impressive title defence. But what about yourself, John?
Yeah, I like you. I wasn't going all out my way to watch. I thought this match actually would have been on a lot earlier. So I sort of forgot that this was happening until the video package came on and they were talking about it. And I mean, she's such a huge star, Shirai. You forget that in Japan. For those people that don't know, she is a mega star. I mean, it's debatable. She's up there, her and Oscar, who's the more bigger, but trust me, she's massive in terms of when Japanese women's wrestling was just getting that massive, vibrant boom period there. And people that followed her for a long time tell me that she, some people rate her as the best of the best. And it's good that WWE kind of, at least in NXT, know how to, work the character. I'm glad they haven't gone too crazy, like generic Japanese type stuff that they do sometimes, which just deflates the character. But yeah, great match again. Like I say, a little bit scary at the beginning. That could have been terrible, but thankfully she's all good. And yeah, I enjoyed this. I mean, I'm interested to see where they go next with her and the title, and obviously with the storylines and stuff, and where that next big match is, because I think she needs another big match again to really give her name even more credibility down there. And I certainly think not rushing at this moment is the perfect storm for her. I think she's got a. I still think she's kind of getting used to the WWE formula, the way they do wrestling in the US. And but she's doing tremendously well, and just hopefully, fingers crossed, WWE keep that consistent level with her, because they've really got a star on their hands. But as we know ourselves, John, we know sometimes where that can lead. So I don't want to speak too soon.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think. I mean, there's nobody that really kind of jumps out as a natural #1 contender following this match. I mean, I even thought that putting Dakota Kai in there was a little bit of a, little bit of a stretch, to be honest with you. As much as I've liked Dakota's work and got a lot of respect for her, she doesn't really jump out and scream as a kind of an NXT champion. But I thought she put in a really good effort here, and the feud was quite good for what it was. They might do a rematch between these two, but like I said, there's nobody that's really jumping out. I mean, the only other NXT female that seems to be featured quite heavily is Candice LeRae. Now, she's a heel, so she could be kind of set up as another challenger for EO fairly soon. But yeah, we'll have to see. It sounds like Rhea Ripley is going to be kind of preoccupied with Raquel Gonzalez, so that kind of keeps her out the picture. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens somewhere down the line. You never know. Interesting times. Yeah. But speaking of interesting times, let's talk about our main event then. So Keith Lee was a double champion after the Great American Bash, managed to beat Adam Cole. He was already the North American champion, managed to get the NXT strap a few weeks ago. I think he's only been the champion for a month, going up against Karrion Kross. So going into this match, I have to be honest with you, I was quite conflicted. I'm a fan of these two, but I knew that one of them would have to lose, unfortunately. There was a chance that it could be Keith Lee, so soon into his NXT Championship reign. There's also a chance, of course, that it could be Karrion Kross, and he's only been with the company a few months. So let's not forget that Karrion Kross has made a huge impact since making his NXT debut, and he's run through the of Tommaso Ciampa, Dominik Dijakovic, of course. So either way, by the end of this match, I'm going to be conflicted, regardless of who wins. But any thoughts on this match going into it, that the competitors, and what I've just said about kind of it being, is it too soon for Karrion Kross, and is it Keith Lee putting his title up on the line against quite a credible opponent so soon into his run? It was kind of, you kind of win with one hand but lose on the other.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say about is it too soon. The issue with me with NXT still to this day is I still don't know if this is a level, pegging with Raw and SmackDown, or if this is still the developmental stage. Because, I know at one point they said, it's all the same now, it's just a different brand. But if I'm being totally honest with you, I still see it as the developmental territory, if you will. The fact that even this Thunderdome business, I don't know if they're getting that or what, but realistically, we know that NXT on a weeknight was by pure reaction to AEW, if we're being honest. So when we talk about the championship and you say, is it too early? If this is a developmental place, I say it's not too early, because back in the day we did see some people come in and just get it quite early off the bat. They didn't go through sort of the mid card, if you will, or that ladder, and they did get it early. And it was not too much of a problem, because you're thinking this is still, before you get to the main part. And the only thing I'm worried about, and I am a bit of a fan of Kross, but the only thing I'm worried about is his entrance, because it's like an amazing entrance. Everyone's talking about it. It's so in time. It's beautiful. But how many times have we seen the entrance be better on NXT than what it gets to be on the main roster? And that's the big thing. I hope they haven't just gone full force with the best of the best already, because sometimes when you're down on NXT, it's unfortunate, but you can almost it's probably happened to Finn Balor in a lot of ways, but you can almost do your best stuff on NXT, and by the time you get to the main roster, it's like if you're a fan that have watched him grow up, you're thinking, I've already seen him achieve this moment. I've already seen him get this part, and I've seen that reaction. So you've got to be careful sometimes. And now, of course, NXT is much more open to a bigger audience because of the TV deal. I'm hoping that fans aren't going to get bored with him too soon, because that's the problem. And I do wonder if they've almost given us too much too soon with him, and whether less is more. I don't know. Time will tell. I think in ring, I think he's exactly what Vince McMahon would look for. I think if we hark back to, say, Lars Sullivan, what they were probably had in store with him, I think that would have been Vince's sort of dream as well. But I think this guy's his new project with Triple H. I think Triple H is, probably the guy that's going to protect him as much as he can at the moment. But I bet you Vince has penciled him in somewhere. Because the way they built him up, it's very old school booking. They've done this long term. You can tell because of who he's beat. They haven't, just had him win, lose at 50-50. So, they definitely penciled this in. I do feel for poor old Keith Lee, because, he's a guy at the start of the year, which seems ages ago now, John, if I'm honest.
It does. Yeah.
But yeah, he was in there. Of course, he squared off with Brock Lesnar, and at that point, I thought I saw money. It was almost on the screen, the dollar signs just coming out at us, waving at us, thinking, "Blimey, this guy, they're going to make a lot of money from someone like Keith Lee." I'm hoping that maybe this is a door opening for Keith Lee, maybe to get the title off him now and put him on the main roster, but. It's just unfortunate it was Keith Lee that had to do the honours at this stage, because it was a bit soon, a little bit immediate. But there is part of me that thinks maybe Keith Lee is going to go on. Maybe they'll do one more return match, but I do suspect that his calling is upon us. But I enjoyed this match. I don't know about you, but
I did too. I thought it was a good match. It was slow in places, but I think it needed to be slow in places. And I think to tell a good story, you've got to have kind of different chapters, like a chapter of a book. But there were spots where it was slow. There was quite fast-paced spots as well. But the story of the match was essentially, I think, early on in the match, Karrion Kross threw Keith Lee into the plexiglass around injured his arm, and then Karrion Kross spent the majority of the rest of the match kind of trying to wear down Keith Lee with his injured left arm. Karrion Kross nearly won the match with his Saito side suplex, which would normally put away any of his opponents, but on this occasion it didn't. He hooked in the cross jacket submission, but Keith Lee was able to fight his way out of it. Keith Lee connected with a spirit bomb, and there was quite a convincing kick out there from Karrion Kross on 2 instead of it being a close near fall near the 3. He kicked out clearly on 2. The match comes to an end when Keith Lee's going up to the second turnbuckle to do his kind of trademark moonsault off the second turnbuckle. He's caught by Karrion Kross. Kross was able to kind of block the move and then hit a second side suplex on Keith Lee from the second turnbuckle and scored the 1-2-3. So quite surprising to some. I'm sure we have a new NXT champion, and as I said, slightly conflicted. I'm really pleased for Karrion Kross and then Scarlett, of course. Disappointed for Keith Lee. Like I say, he only had the championship for a month. He was a great double champion for all of a week until he gave up and vacated the North American Championship. Of course, now he's Keith no belts. He doesn't hold any gold in NXT at all. So it makes you wonder whether he's fallen out of favour with NXT and with WWE, which I don't think is the case, or whether they've got bigger plans. Now, I agree with you. Maybe there's a return match. There has to be a return match between these two, a chance for Keith Lee to regain the championship. But I think that very, very soon, Keith Lee will be going on to either Raw or SmackDown. I think they see bigger things for him, and I think they kind of rushed that storyline along. Now I think people are still getting familiar with Karrion Kross. Who is Karrion Kross? He's only been on NXT for a couple of months, and he's made that quick transition to main eventer, and he's now the NXT champion. So you know, all in all, I thought it was a good match. Wasn't the best match on the card. An interesting way to end the show. A fantastic kind of outro, you could say, with Karrion Kross and Scarlett on the rampway there, all the pyro, all the lights, all the fireworks going off behind them with the new NXT champion and Scarlett at his feet. So a fantastic kind of visual there. But yeah, it makes you kind of think what's next for Keith Lee. Now, I mean, you alluded to it earlier. Is he you know, being called up to bigger, brighter, greener pastures? It's going to be interesting. There must be a reason why they made this transition so soon into his reign, John.
Yeah, I think part of the problem as well with WWE and Keith Lee is that Keith Lee as a baby face is kind of hurt him a little bit. I suspect if he was a heel, he probably would have had a completely different run with both those championships. But, you know, they don't, his character, like he's very jokey, and they kind of like, I don't want to see that big bad, he-fi, that kind of big man style that we so generically see in WWE. So I'm glad they've gone away from that, but I do feel like they needed to give him a little bit more, you know, a little bit more freedom maybe with what he can say, and get more of his personality out there, a little bit like they've done with Drew. And if you think about it, you know, up until last night, we've got 3 male champions that are all, you know, baby faces at the moment. You know, WWE they don't do well with babyface champions, but for whatever reason, they just can't keep them at a level sometimes. You know, people get bored. We run out of steam. You know, they become almost like huggable, lovable people all the time. And we need a little bit more of an edge. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that with Keith Lee, if I'm honest. We saw him get fired and angry a few times in this feud, which was good, especially with the flash paper, the fire thing, which I thought was cool. But, you know, not enough of that, in my opinion. I don't know. Matt Riddle, obviously, he's gone up to the main roster. I wonder, you know, they were both a tag team at one point. I suspect maybe Raw could be Keith Lee's new home, and, you know, he'll get a little bit of a vibrant push. I think, personally, just thinking ahead here, that with this whole Thunderdome business coming along and the way Vince channeled that comment that he made, you won't see it coming, or the rest of it. I do suspect they want to go a different tone. We know ratings are really not great at the moment, and they're pulling out everything. And I think Keith Lee might be one of the components that they put in early on to just spice it up a little bit on Raw, which may be a big thing for him. It may work out quite well. I personally would use Keith Lee. I know that some of the news in the week, we saw Bill Goldberg has signed another 3-year contract.
Oh, dear me, really?
For a couple of matches a year, and I'm thinking, well, look, you've got Keith Lee in your door. You know, he's there every week. Like, we need to start really focusing on the talent we've got. I don't think you'd have gone back to the Attitude Era and gone, right, okay, Austin, you know, we're not going to have you this month. We're going to have Roddy Piper coming in to do some matches. No, we wouldn't have done that. We would have stuck with the best of the best at the time. So I think WWE need to just have a little bit more faith in someone like Keith Lee. He's a big guy. You look at when he stood up with Brock Lesnar, that altercation they had, it was fantastic. I really thought there was money in that, more money in that than say Bobby Lashley.
I'm going to jump in there. Because I honestly think that Brock Lesnar is due a return fairly soon, especially now they've got the Thunderdome set in. And I think Brock Lesnar has a pretty decent say in who he goes up against, who he feuds with. And I think after that kind of face-off and confrontation that I wouldn't be surprised if over the next couple of weeks, maybe next month or so, we see Brock Lesnar return and Keith Lee standing in front of him, and that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah, perfect combination, and you know, it was amazing. But when Keith Lee was stood up against Brock Lesnar, you thought, hang on a minute, like, this guy's big. I mean, really big. Even perhaps, you know, just as a visual standpoint, you'd say, you know, against Bobby Lashley, even he's humongous, and the things he can do. It's kind of what Brock could do back in his heyday. You know, he was jumping off them, of course, in OVW doing shooting stars. Keith Lee is more than capable of doing this kind of crazy stuff for a guy his size. But to look at Keith Lee, you think, how can this guy move as quick as he does? But he is, and I think Brock likes that. I think he likes the competition. He likes a little bit of see what you can do against me type of thing. I think there's a bit of a competitive edge, and
it's brand new for Brock as well. It's brand new, it's fresh for Brock, and I think he'd be well up for that. I wouldn't be surprised sooner or later we'll see those two. So a couple of questions for you, John, before we go. Who's next for Karrion Kross then? I mean, we spoke earlier about Finn Balor. He's now clearly a babyface. Adam Cole's now a babyface. You know, is there a strong babyface contender out there that could be the next takeover opponent for Karrion Kross?
Well, I suspect it could be Finn Balor after that win last night, because I definitely wasn't expecting it. And if that is the case, he'll probably be fed to Kross, I would say. And we can probably say hand on heart that Finn Balor might not be ever getting back to that great stage we thought. If that's the case, because it's almost like a transitional opponent for a little while, until they get someone they can make some serious dough with. But he's out there. I think Adam Cole, I can still see him having a return match after the sort of the amazing reaction that match has got last night. I suspect that McAfee will be doing some more stuff with him, and maybe they give Adam Cole some fresh stuff as a babyface, and build him a little bit more towards maybe the back end of October or whenever the next takeover is going to be, and go with that one. But I think Finn Balor at the moment, you'd probably say, is the person that will be there. But I won't say too many good things about poor old Finn Balor, I've got to say. One thing I will add, John, I don't know what the odds were last night, but the stuff I was seeing in the week, like, nobody expected a new champion from what I read into it. I think most people expected Keith Lee to retain, so maybe a little bit of a shocking result as well at the end of last night.
Yeah, no, I personally wasn't that surprised, because I think that they've been building Karrion Kross up to be such a dominant heel, and like I say, the overall presentation, the overall package with the entrance and with Scarlett, and he's been very, very dominant. I'm not surprised at all. But interesting times. And what was your match of the night, buddy? What was your match of the night?
Oh, it's a hard one. It's really between Pat McAfee and the ladder. I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Adam Cole and Pat McAfee, purely because I think this gets the nudge, because I just had zero expectations. I was thinking Gronk all over again. Here we go, and especially when he come out, I was like, he's a tire. It's a bit, what is this guy? He's coming out in like a vest type tank top, and I was kind of really worried that we were going to get like some sort of Pete Rose type stuff going on with this. But when you saw him coming out with that, I think it surprised me for the better. And to see Adam Cole work as a babyface was quite nice as well. And to see where they go. So there were a couple of nice surprises in that. Very entertaining, I would say. So, for me, it makes a change, because I'm normally always about the wrestling, but I think the entertainment won me over a little bit.
Yeah, and like I say, a very close call between that and the ladder match, but I'm going to go with the Pat McAfee and Adam Cole match. Also, is my favourite match of the night. So, John, brilliant to have you on the Wrestling with John's podcast again to cover TakeOver 30. Any plugs you want to throw out there? Anywhere we can find you or Powered4 on social media, and just anything you want to throw out there, really?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram. You can get me at John_Scott_4. And you can definitely see all the stuff, all the news, any breaking news I've got for the Powered4. You'll get it there first. And of course, just to let everybody know that come September, we haven't got an official date yet, but it will be available in September, probably around the mid. You will be able to go onto the video on demand site. You'll be able to have a nose around and sign up to what should be an amazing platform for a lot of UK wrestling. Obviously, touch wood behind me here, I want to say that we're going to get some events coming around very soon in the UK. I know there's a lot been announced, but every day changes with the whole COVID situation. We have to remember that. So plans change, as they say. So we have to be a little bit wary of it. But there's a lot of exciting stuff. Also, I hope to be able to announce even more content coming. We're in talks with a few Australian promotions at the moment, a Japanese promotion, and a couple across to our US friends as well. So that'll be really good. And we've got a wonderful, and I do say wonderful, for anybody that is a bit of an old school fan of the 90s, late 80s in this country, places like Germany, Austria. Some of this footage hasn't been seen for a good couple of decades, of some of these wrestlers coming across from America doing these wonderful tours. People like Warrior in there. We've got Regal, of course, Earthquake, Animal, and Hulk from the Road Warriors. I mean, there's some real crazy names in there, but it's real gold for purist fans that love that kind of stuff, especially some of the Japanese wrestlers that were on there as well. Fujinami is featured quite heavily, Dynamite Kid. So if you're a fan of that stuff, honestly, there's about over 300 matches that we're going to have available. So I'm really excited to get into that. And of course, we've got the 1PW library as well, which is a very niche thing. I'm sure people remember that in around the 2000s, the early 2000s. That was a big thing. There's some crazy matches there. Your likes of AJ Styles, and a lot of these people are now, of course, like CM Punk. They're on the main roster. You had Abyss back then, Jeff Jarrett, Harry Smith, a real variety of talent. So if you're into just, older stuff as well, we've got that, which is a nice change up as well. And of course, with all the media stuff, should hopefully be very exciting. And of course, working with you, John, on the YouTube stuff, we're going to have couple of exciting shows there to get our teeth into as well. So hopefully everything is going to be going forward as planned. But like I say, I just want to get back to a wrestling show. I know it sounds a bit selfish, but I would love to just get back there, even if it's just at lower capacity at the moment. I think that's better than anything. Before I go though, John, obviously with SummerSlam tonight, are you going to be? Are you big for this? What was I just want to get your take on that first reaction of the Thunderdome when you saw it on SmackDown. I know you saw that the other day. What was your reaction to that?
I
was sci-fi.
Yeah, I was quite impressed by it. I think it looks fantastic. As for all the kind of the faces in the crowd, I mean, I was messaging you and I was saying that, I'd like it if the fans were a little bit more animated. They just look like a bunch of geeks watching wrestling in front of their computer instead of being a bit more interactive, a little bit more, I don't know, waving your hands and kind of enjoying it, or, dancing in the background. I would have been a bit more animated anyway. I probably would have got thrown off the show if I was one of them. But I thought it was good. And I think it adds a nice element to the show. And I think that the wrestlers will kind of feed off of that as well and kind of enjoy themselves instead of playing to nobody, or maybe some NXT developmental wrestlers behind a plexiglass window. It does add a bit more of an atmosphere. You've got all the lights, you've got the pyro, you've got the lasers. I think it's a big thumbs up from me. I think it's a massive plus for what WWE are trying to achieve. And I think it's going to look great for SummerSlam tonight. As for SummerSlam itself, I got to be honest with you, I'm not looking forward to it. There isn't really a match that jumps out, if I'm honest with you. I could probably only remember 2 or 3 matches that are on the card. If I was to say hand on heart, the only match I'm really intrigued by is Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton. I've got a sinking feeling that Randy Orton could pick up the championship just to kind of switch things up a little bit. You know how they like to swerve us, with hopefully a view to making Drew a 2-time champion when there's fans in attendance. But it's a show I'm not really looking forward to. So we'll watch it. TakeOver always takes precedent for me, and it's always the show that I look forward to. That's my WrestleMania over WrestleMania weekend, is a TakeOver show, not necessarily the big show that follows, because we know that it's always a distant second place to the TakeOvers. So I'm so glad that we could cover it together. TakeOver 30 today, John.
Yeah, it's been good. And my reaction to the Thunderdome, I mean, it was like something out of a sci-fi film, like Running Man. Kind of like the scene from The Dark Knight where Morgan Freeman is standing up there with all the screens around him. One thing I will say, John, I can imagine, I don't know if it's Kevin Dunn, and he's probably got an army of security that are just watching every single feed video just in case something happens. And there are fans out there that would love to do that as well. So I can imagine somebody's got their finger on the button right there to do that, just reading on some of the guidelines as well. I don't think you'll see too many AEW signs that will go in there. And
I think there were fans that were kind of had their images on the screens. There was 1 or 2 that were asleep. And you want a bit more animation than that, don't you? You want a bit more. But oh, crikey. Yeah, there we go. But John, it's been brilliant. You have the Wrestling with John's podcast once again, and we'll catch up with you and all of your Powered 4 stuff fairly soon. Looking forward to that. As for me, don't forget to check out my merchandise on ProWrestlingTees.com/Wrestling with Johners, and don't forget to check out episode 150, my exclusive interview with Ring of Honor star Dak Draper. It really is a fun listen and a fun watch, and catch the YouTube version if you can. Lots of added extras thrown in there. But from John Scott, thanks a lot. We'll catch up with you all again soon.